Coming this fall from SJS Direct in paperback and Kindle Unlimited, The Man Crisis. Learn why so many men are struggling to find their way in an increasingly gynocentric world in The Man Crisis. You can pre-order your copy of The Man Crisis today on Amazon.com. A lot of people are probably wondering how the cases of Bill Cosby and Brett Kavanaugh interconnect. And I'm going to explain regarding constitutional law how the cases of both Bill Cosby and Brett Kavanaugh are interconnected. Now, both Bill Cosby and Brett Kavanaugh's cases have to do with the constitutional standard of all men being created equal, established by the first 10 amendments of the United States Constitution and the 13th Amendment of the United States Constitution. And when you look at these cases of those amendments, they all relate to a man's due process under the law. And in Bill Cosby's sexual assault trial, Kevin Steele, the prosecutor, in his zeal to get a conviction against Bill Cosby, undermined the Sixth Amendment and due process under the law when he railroaded Bill Cosby on those contrived, trumped-up charges for the sexual assault against Andrea Constad. Because your Kevin Steele, in his zeal, wanted to prosecute Bill Cosby, and he ran on that case. And because he ran on that case of running to prosecute Bill Cosby, he clearly showed bias. And it's that bias that he showed that really is one of the core reasons why Bill Cosby desperately needs to appeal this case, because the prosecutor has shown that he cannot be fair and objective and try a case based on the evidence, and he also used hearsay as testimony. So there was a clear case of bias with the prosecutor, a clear case of bias with the judge whose wife was a rape counselor, and a clear case of overall bias with this Me Too movement trying Bill Cosby's case in the court of public opinion. And because this prosecutor, in his zeal, went out here to prosecute Bill Cosby with bias, had a judge go out here and side with him on bias, we now have a complete undermining of the Sixth Amendment here in the United States. And it's that undermining of the Sixth Amendment that impacted Brett Kavanaugh's Supreme Court Justice confirmation right now. And this is how both cases interconnect, because with this Me Too movement undermining the Sixth Amendment of the United States Amendment, which is about due process under the law, what is happening to Brett Kavanaugh is that his whole Supreme Court confirmation is being undermined by women like your Christine Blasey Ford, who want to come out here and make an allegation against your Brett Kavanaugh without giving this man due process under the law. Because if your Christine Blasey Ford was sexually assaulted, she was supposed to go to law enforcement. It's not about this whole emotional argument about why I didn't report. The whole thing is, in this United States, under our Constitution, a man or a woman is innocent until proven guilty. And under our Sixth Amendment, if we have a charge against an individual, they have to go under due process under the law. And this is what Brett Kavanaugh was arguing in his statements on Thursday, that he did not receive due process under the law. Because if your Christine Blasey Ford wanted to make these allegations, the time to make those allegations was 36 years ago in a police report where police could investigate this sexual assault, they could get evidence, they could go talk to witnesses, and they could substantiate your Christine Blasey Ford's allegations. That's how our American legal system works, and that's why our American legal system was the greatest legal system in the world. Unfortunately, because we have these gynocentrists and beta males in the United States, our legal system oftentimes winds up getting undermined, and the principles of our Constitution wind up getting undermined, because these gynocentrists and beta males, what they want to do is please this female, and in order to please the female, They try to deal with her based on her terms and the emotional argument of trust and belief. And no man in the United States should ever follow the standard of trust and believe, because the standard of trust and believe is not what the founding fathers established our Constitution on. No, our founding fathers established the Constitution based on the standards of law, and the reason why they based it on the standards of law is because King George III wanted everybody to trust and believe him. And that's what these females want people to do in the case of your Christine Blasey Ford. They want us to trust and believe her. Unfortunately, when people trust and believe women, what happens is we wind up with situations like Jim Crow America. Now, after the case of Dred Scott and the case of Plessy versus Ferguson, we had the legal standard of Jim Crow. And what women did under the standard of Jim Crow was establish the principles and standard of trust and believe. And in the South, because women had this standard of trust and believe, the Ku Klux Klan terrorized black people and lynched black people based on just the word of a white woman. So a white woman could come out here and say that she was raped, she was sexually assaulted by a black man, and a mob of beta white males in sheets and hoods would go out here and try to kill a black man, lynch a black man, and in other cases, when it relates to this white woman, a black man could lose his job and lose his life. And what we're seeing right now with Brett Kavanaugh is like a vicious cycle where this is getting ready to repeat itself, because Bill Cosby's case, like the Dred Scott case and the Plessy versus Ferguson case, undermined our Sixth Amendment. And with the case of Brett Kavanaugh, it's like the Supreme Court creating an interpretation of the law. And this interpretation of the law is a scary one, because we now see that it's not a race issue anymore as related to Jim Crow. We now see it as a gender issue as related to Jim Crow. And what your feminists want to do is they want to use Bill Cosby to go after Brett Kavanaugh, and they want to use Brett Kavanaugh's case to impose gynocentric Jim Crow on all men, regardless of race, and they want to obliterate the concept of due process under the law. And that's why this case of Brett Kavanaugh is extremely important, because the Supreme Court confirmation of Brett Kavanaugh is the last line of defense for all men here in America. If Brett Kavanaugh is not confirmed as a Supreme Court justice, what is going to happen is the Sixth Amendment is going to be completely obliterated for all men. There will no longer be due process under the law for all men here in America, and men will not have any rights any woman needs to regard. And all a woman has to do with that precedent established is go out here and make any sort of allegation, such as rape, sexual assault, or whatever she wants to say. Try that case in the court of public opinion, or try it on a street, and what will happen is that man will either be arrested, prosecuted, and convicted just based on that woman's word alone, or he could possibly lose his job or his career based on an allegation of sexual harassment or sexual assault, whether it is substantiated by facts or not, because we are supposed to trust and believe the woman, and that's, again, a very scary standard if you are a man, because in Jim Crow America, black men lived in fear of this standard, and they had to fear every day whether or not they would have their job, or if the day they left their house would be their last day on earth. And this is a very terrifying thing for white men to deal with, because in the case of Bill Cosby, many people thought, oh, that was just happening to that black man. But when they see with Brett Kavanaugh that what's happening is this can happen to any man, regardless of his race, because your Brett Kavanaugh is your rich, white, alpha male And if they can emasculate this rich white alpha male by denying him confirmation to the Supreme Court, then no man in this United States will have any sort of rights here in America, a country that they founded and a country that they built. Because it was black men who built the United States, it was white men who founded the United States, and we have feminists looking to take away rights from the men who are the natural builders of this country. And if you take away a man's rights to his intangibles, such as his freedom and his safety, then that man has no incentive to continue participating in things like the United States economy. And this is something that your feminists don't see regarding the whole state of Brett Kavanaugh. All they're doing is thinking about winning at this case and destroying this man's life, his reputation, and his career as part of this Me Too movement. They're all caught up in their emotions, not thinking about the consequences and ramifications long term as related to Brett Kavanaugh, because Brett Kavanaugh is the linchpin that men's rights is holding on to right now. And if Brett Kavanaugh's case falls apart, then men's rights have been completely eradicated here in America, and we're headed towards becoming a gynocentric state like Sweden and a gynocentric state like what the UK and France and all these other countries in Europe are becoming right now. And that's a scary situation, because in a gynocentric matriarchal state, your economy is not the primary focus, your businesses aren't the primary focus. It's all about creating a fiefdom to please the females, and in creating that fiefdom is all about giving the females resources without having a tax base to be able to pay for it. So those countries that are controlled like that, they're on a fast track to collapse. And if the United States does not have people to really connect the dots as related to Bill Cosby and Brett Kavanaugh, we are going to be headed towards a cliff where the country is about to head towards collapse. Because with the case of Bill Cosby, what the feminists did was they played white men against black men on race, and then they used that to create the legal precedent to be able to undermine our Sixth Amendment and due process under the law. And then they went after Brett Kavanaugh with these allegations of sexual harassment and sexual assault against these women, and are using that to create the foundation for the legal precedent for a new era of Jim Crow, gynocentric Jim Crow. And it's this era of gynocentric Jim Crow that every American man needs to be scared of, especially black men, because when it comes down to these feminists, you need to understand these feminists are racists, and they have a deep-seated hatred of black men, and they will use these allegations and their beta male enforcers to go after black men on false allegations, and use these false allegations to arrest black men, try black men in kangaroo courts like the one used to railroad Bill Cosby, and then they will have you imprisoned in prison while they have their gynocentric fiefdom based on a welfare state. That's what these feminists want to do, and sadly, most American men are too polarized on race to understand the issue as related to gynocentrism and the issue related to feminism in the cases of both Bill Cosby and Brett Kavanaugh, because both cases are connected, and they are connected by our United States Constitution and the rights afforded men by our United States Constitution. And if these feminists can undermine our United States Constitution, then we, the people in America, are in trouble, because all you have to do is look at the black community to see where feminists are getting ready to take America. And if they take America in that direction, America won't be great. America will be a footnote in fallen empires like the Roman Empire. If you'd like to see me make more videos like this, you can donate to my Patreon by clicking the link in the description box. And if you want to try some of my SJS Direct publications, like the upcoming Man Crisis book, you may do so by clicking the link to Amazon.com. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.